Happy Wednesday. Oh, wow. It's a beautiful evening, and um, Terry right now is at Sacred Space, and she is talking about cutting of cords. And so she's going to be doing some wonderful things tonight on the cutting of cords. So grateful for Reverend Terry and all of our ministers and everyone at Sacred Space. Just so incredibly thankful. So, I spent the day, well, doing a lot of things, but I spent the day putting my ladybugs over my roses and planting herbs and kale, and it was a beautiful day of communion. What I kind of wanted to talk about today was things that look in our life like a problem, and how do we find a solution, right? Not that we have to be solution driven, although I remember when I was a manager, I used to tell my employees, I'm always there to listen to you. Please, you feel free to come to me with your problems. But, if you're going to take the time to come to me with your problems, take some time to think about possible solutions so we can sit down and discuss those possibilities together. And sometimes I think, in our lives, we get so problem driven that we aren't open to the possibility of solution, right? And or we might think that this is what a solution should look like. So I want to share a couple of quotes, and I want to share a historical story to emphasize this point. So the first one is by John Gardner, and he says, "We are all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems." We are all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems. There is, I was thinking about Sarah Wart, who is originally from England. And one of the things the English say when they're talking about things that are, wonderful or whatever, they'll say, "That's brilliant. Oh, this is Katie. This is our cat, Katie. Hi, Katie. Now we share, now we share with Katie. Thank you for that beautiful screen time." So it's just very interesting. uh, some of the things that we think are problems, are great opportunities, actually. We're just going to play a little keep away here because pretty soon she'll start trying to type on the keyboard. And then the other quote is from Henry Ford. He says, "Most people spend more time and energy going around problems than in trying to solve them." And I had to think about that too. Think about Henry Ford. I don't know exactly, how many times it took him to make the Ford vehicle. But, I think of all the greats and the whole series of what we might call, mistakes or failures. And Einstein, I believe, no, not Einstein, Edison had something like, it took me like something like 999 tries, you know, before I discovered the right thing. And I can't remember exactly what that quote is, but, he put it in a positive, no pun intended, light. And I think it's all about how we embrace that, because sometimes things look insurmountable. So I don't know if you know the story about the Gordian knot. But the Gordian knot is a Greek legend about this guy called Gordius. And he was a poor peasant. He was traveling to, I think, the Greek town of Phrygia or something, with his wife, and in a cart, ox cart. And some of the local, um, fortune tellers or soothsayers had said that, a peasant would arrive in a wagon, and the people of the town should embrace him and make him king. So there we go. So Gordius and his wife come in, and the town embraces him as the king. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what that would seem like to Gordius? Here he's poor, he's got his wife, he's got this old ox cart, and he goes into this town, and people are like, "Hey, long live the king, you're our king." And look at that, without even knowing. I mean, can you imagine, too, what his life must have been like, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's king. Wow, isn't that amazing? That is an amazing thing to think about. You know, when I think about, or if you think about what a problem is today and what your life is like today, and then all of a sudden tomorrow you're in a totally different place, right? It's kind of the upside down world. So the story goes that Gordius was so thankful and impressed that he put his ox cart into the what I want to what's it called, the temple. Jeez, I don't know why I just lost that. The temple of Zeus, and he tied his ox cart in a certain way, a very complicated knot that couldn't be untied. It was called the Gordian knot. So in about, I think it was 300 or 333 BC, along comes Alexander the Great, and he's in Asia Minor, right? He's 23 years old, and he's trying to. He needs an omen. He needs something big. He needs something really big to impress his enemies and his own soldiers. 23 years old, right? He really needs to make a name for himself. So he gets upon the town of Phrygia, and he realizes, yeah, he needs this omen. And he goes into the temple of Zeus, the basilica, and there's the ox cart, and there's the knot, and it's quite infamous by now that no one can untie the knot, therefore the Gordian knot. And the knot is tied up with the loose ends tucked inside itself, no way you can undo it. So it's pretty inconceivable that this young 23-year-old would actually figure out a way to do that. And I made a notation here, so let me see if I can't find. Yeah. So anyway, he's looking around and he's struggling with the knot, and then all of a sudden, he steps back and he calls out. And he says, what does it matter how I loose it? Right? What does it matter how I loose it? And so with that, he just draws his sword, and in one fell swoop, he unties the knot because, he cuts it in half. Whew. All those years, here is the complicated Gordian knot. Only someone, who, would be an omen around could untie the knot. And the one who does says, how does it matter how I untie it? I need to unloose the Gordian knot. And of course it's telling because, he is living by the sword, right? He's living by the sword. So, he uses his sword to have and cut away the Gordian knot. My reason for talking about that today is we think about it should, we think sometimes it needs to be a certain way that we solve our problems. And I think it's well worth our time, like Alexander, to say, how does it matter? Why does it matter how I solve it? Why is that important? Right? Why is it important how I solve the problem? And usually it's kind of that middle way, isn't it? The place where you wouldn't even think about how that problem would be solved. So I'd encourage you to think about some of your own problems and issues in your life, and ask the question, ask the question, does it matter how I solve it? Am I attached to how I solve it? Or am I just open and receptive to it being solved? Am I open to it being disguised as this unique opportunity? Because we know it was for Alexander, right? He took full advantage of this omen to get people on his side and to make a point. 23 years old. That is very actually clear thinking, isn't it? Which is why Alexander won so many victories, because he would ask that question in his life. Why does it matter? How does it matter? Is there another way? Right? And Alexander didn't really go looking for it. He worked with the tools at hand, with his sword, something that he knew well. Now here's my other point. If you try to solve a problem with somebody else's mentality or somebody else's skill set, you're going to run into some problems. You're probably going to have the Gordian knot forever in your life. But use the tools that you know best at hand. So if we're going to be talking spiritually about this, which is what we do, uh, think about what your tools are. Compassion, love, patience, understanding, right? Things like that cut through the knots in our lives. They do some amazing things. This is Miss Katie. Miss Katie is about, gosh, must be about 12 years old now, 11, 12 years old, and she's quite a lover. So if we can think about those possibilities and those things in our lives and how we want to deal with them spiritually, instead of beating ourselves up or criticizing ourselves. And so this is a message today to all of you, but also to one particular friend, and you will know who you are. It's also the way to deal with confidence. So when you think about in your dream the other thing that person didn't say, it's about looking for the opportunities. Right? If confidence is a problem, then it's about looking at the opportunities that these things bring up. Right? It's your deep willingness to question why this keeps coming up. And then what are your tools to cut through this Gordian knot? Some of the most amazing things happen when we look at problems in our lives. And we don't have to confront them. It's not a confrontational thing. It's an opportunity to look at a pretty tangled mess and go, well, if I keep looking for the loose ends that are tucked into the knot, I'm not going to find them, and I'm just going to keep feeling frustrated. But if I know that my tools at hand are compassion with myself and my ability to listen in dream time when teachers come to me, that's amazing. That's amazing. There's an Alexander moment. So you know who you are. I'm very proud of you for what you're doing. Not only your work in the world, but your ability to look at how you react and maybe all those different things and see how far you've come. It's important. When you row a boat, you're kind of looking at where you came from, right? Because you're rowing this way, and you're kind of looking at where you came from. You don't really know where you're going and what that means until you see how far you've come, how different the path is. It's not about looking back. It's about really congratulating yourself on the spiritual work you're doing in this world, and this is for everybody. Right? This message, even though that one piece is for one person, I bet there's many people who could relate to that. There's not too big of a knot in your life to figure out. Get your sword of expertise and cut through it. Right? That knot was an opportunity for other people, because look at Gordius. He was a peasant, and he came into kingship. Right? Just as sort of like this beautiful thing that came from heaven. But he probably had lots of knots in his life. So he left that knot for others. And they could have that sort of instant moment. And there it was. It was Alexander who had that instant moment. So I wish for you today that you look at your own Gordian knot, not as problem-driven, but as an opportunity to find a new and exciting solution, one that will amaze you and open up all avenues of possibility to you. I wish for you a Gordius moment and an Alexander moment. Yeah. So, happy Wednesday. May all the peace be yours. And we know it already is, should you choose it. 1, 2, 3. Oh my God! I love myself. I love you. Namaste. see you tomorrow. If I can get this thing off, right? Not a problem. Not a Gordian knot problem. Little commentary, little bit of humor on the end, right? Okay. Thank you for watching. You are so appreciated and you're so loved.